This is a review of Brahma-samhita, chapter 5. We just started the book, so this will include the introduction, the foreword by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and texts 1 through 16. And to do so, we'll switch over to slides, read from them, and then switch back and forth from viewing each one of us who are speaking back onto the slides. So give me a second and I'll get to the slides. Okay, Brahma-samhita, review, July 2021. And of course, this chapter is only chapter 5. And the introduction as to why and how this book came to be present, since it was actually spoken or composed at the beginning of the creation. We'll go to Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila, chapter 9, texts 237 to through 241, which describe Lord Chaitanya's traveling throughout South India shortly after he had taken sannyas at the age of 24. And this is what happened. In the temple of Adikeshava, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu discussed spiritual matters amongst highly advanced devotees. While there, he found a chapter of the Brahma-samhita. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was greatly happy to find a chapter of that scripture and symptoms of ecstatic transformation, trembling, tears, perspiration, trance, and jubilation were manifest in his body. There is no scripture equal to Brahma-samhita as far as the final spiritual conclusion is concerned. Indeed, in that scripture, the supreme revelation of the glories of Lord Govinda, for it reveals the topmost knowledge about him. Since all conclusions are briefly presented in the Brahma-samhita, it is essential amongst all the Vaishnava literatures. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu copied the Brahma-samhita, and then with great pleasure, he went to the place known as Ananta Padmanabha. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Brahma-samhita is very important scripture. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu acquired the 5th chapter from the Adikeshava temple. In that 5th chapter, the philosophical conclusion of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, simultaneous oneness and difference, is presented. This chapter also presents methods of devotional service, the 18-syllable Vedic hymn, discourses on the soul, the supersoul, and fruitive activity, an explanation of the Kama Gayatri, Kama Bija, and the original Mahavishnu, and a detailed description of the spiritual world, specifically Goloka Vrindavan. The Brahma-samhita also explains the demigod Ganesh, Garbhodakshai Vishnu, the origin of the Gayatri mantra, the form of Govinda and his transcendental position and abode, the living entities, the highest goal, the goddess Durga, the meaning of austerity, the 5 gross elements, love of Godhead, impersonal Brahman, the initiation of Lord Brahma, and the vision of transcendental love enabling one to see the Lord. The steps of devotional service are also explained. The mind, Yoga Nidra, the goddess of fortune, devotional service in spontaneous ecstasy, incarnations beginning with Lord Ramachandra, deities, the conditioned soul and its duties, the truth about Lord Vishnu, prayers, Vedic hymns, Lord Shiva, the Vedic literature, personalism and impersonalism, good behavior, and many other subjects are also discussed. There is also a description of the sun and the universal form of the Lord. All these subjects are conclusively explained in a nutshell in the Brahma-samhita. So obviously, this book of only 62 verses is similar to the Chatur Shloki that we just studied in the 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Within these seed verses is knowledge that can be expanded and commented upon and reiterated into so many different other topics. Just like the Chaturshloki, the 4 shlokas of Srimad Bhagavatam are expanded into 18,000 verses. And we just read that Srila Prabhupada said even into 4 billion verses, they can be expanded. Just like a seed has its potential to become a plant, and within that plant are more fruits with more seeds, and on and on and on. This is a potency of transcendental energy. So we can't possibly cover all these points, either in our study or especially in a 1-hour review or 1.5 hours. But we'll do our best to capture the basic themes and flow of transcendental thought and some of the more important points that are brought up in the text. I asked everybody to write their questions in forums. I answered a few of them. Some of them will also find weaved into this presentation so that we can go more deeply into each one of those questions. So thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate your association. Please use the chat to let us know you want to speak. If you do have a question, raise your hand, use that feature. And before we go, before we get into it, I also want to thank Vaishnavi Dasi for hosting these Zooms. It's been a great enhancement of our studies. And also my wife, Samapriya Devi Dasi, who helps me and put together these courses. So now we'll go back to the screen and Sama will pick different people to read these topics.
Okay, so before we begin, Gopa Patni will be the first one.
You're really loud in my.
Sorry, I don't know how to adjust that. Okay.
I'll adjust mine then.
Okay, am I too loud, everyone? Okay, that's it. I can make one suggestion that we just read this very slowly. So, because actually the meaning will become revealed, but we have to just give it attention. So let's read everything very slowly, and we'll start with Gopa. If you could start with the foreword here by Bhaktisiddhanta. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Johnny. The first hymn will establish the supremacy of the absolute truth. If his substratum is not shot by the bullets of limited time, ignorance and uncomfortable feeling, as well as by recognizing the same as an effect instead of accepting him as the prime cause, he will be satisfied to mark that object of their determination in the par excellent Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, who has eternally embodied himself in his ever presence, all blissful, all pervasive, perfected knowledge, as the very fountainhead of all prime causes of unending, non-beginning time, the supplying fosterer of all entities, viz. Mundane and transcendental. The subsequent lines will go to determine the different aspects of the absolute, who are but emanations of the supreme fountainhead Krishna, the attractive entity of all entities. Moreover, the derivative proclamation of the nomenclature will indicate the plane of uninterrupted, unending, transcendental felicity, and the nomenclature himself is the source of the two components, which go by the names of efficient and material causes. The very transcendental name Krishna is known as the embodiment of all transcendental eternal rasas, as well as the origin of all eclipsed conceptions of interrupted rasas found in the mentality of animated beings, which are successfully depicted by literatures and rhetoricians of our mundane speculation.
Okay, so this, what I did was chose these two paragraphs from Bhaktisiddhanta's introduction or foreword, because they basically explain what the whole book's about. The first hymn will establish the supremacy of the absolute truth. That's what the first hymn does. If his substratum is not shot by the bullets of limited time, ignorance, and uncomfortable feelings. In other words, unless someone interprets what's being said by their own force of their minds or lack of intelligence. This is what's being established. This is how it becomes distorted. So the first hymn establishes the supremacy of the absolute truth. And as we stated in the introductory letter, emails describing this lesson, Isvaraha Paramaha Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Adyar Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam is the Paribhasa Sutra of the entire book. This statement creates a foundation for everything that will come afterwards. The subsequent lines will go to determine the different aspects of the absolute. In other words, the book describes Krishna as the supreme cause of all causes. And then the rest of the book determines different aspects of that absolute, who are but emanations of the supreme fountainhead, Krishna, the all attractive of all, and the attractive entity of all entities. Moreover, the derivative proclamation, which means that's what will come later of the nomenclature, will indicate the plane of uninterrupted, unending transcendental felicity. And the nomenclature himself is the source of the two components who go by the name efficient and material causes, explaining how Krishna, although in this plane of uninterrupted, unending transcendental felicity, is also the source of the material and efficient causes. The very name Krishna is known as the embodiment of all transcendental eternal rasas, which means that the name Krishna, as we've learned probably right from the beginning of our Krishna consciousness, means all attractive. So he's the source of all transcendental eternal rasas, rasaraj, as well as the origin of eclipsed conceptions of interrupted rasas found in the mentality of animated beings in this world, the mundane world. So they are perversions and shadows of the original rasas. So this book describes the supremacy of the absolute and subsequent different aspects of the absolute.
Also, I'd like to add one thing that we're going to see throughout this reading today, actually, the complete, constant reference to mundane and eternal, the mundane world and the spiritual eternal world, which is the source of everything. That's what, throughout the purpose, throughout the text, if we keep that in mind, it's referring to the mundane or the eternal realm. That's what I picked up from that. So next, would you like to read, Nanda?
Yes, ma'am. Brahma-samhita 5:1. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam. Krishna, who is known as Govinda, is the supreme Godhead. He has an eternal, blissful, spiritual body. He is the origin of all. He has no other origin, and he is the prime cause of all causes. Purport. The very name Krishna implies his love-attracting designation, expressing by his eternal nomenclature the acme of entity. His eternal, beautiful, heavenly, blue-tinged body, glowing with the intensity of ever-existing knowledge, has a flute in both his hands. Krishna, as truly visioned in his variegated pastimes, such as owner of transcendental cows, chief of cowherds, consort of milkmaids, ruler of the terrestrial abode Gokula, an object of worship by transcendental residents of Goloka beauties, is Govinda. He is the root cause of all causes, who are the predominating and predominated agents of the universe. This book is a treatise of Krishna, so the preamble is enacted by chanting his name in the beginning.
Hati, do you want to say something about that, or Nandaji? No. Nanda, you
But-
got something to say?
No, but
I
thanks
can't
for
hear you.
telling us to read slowly. I'm because that really helps.
Okay, good, good. Next, Pritam, can you read? Unless you have something to say, Patti?
No, good.
Okay, all right. Pritam, why don't you read next?
Okay. Brahma-samhita 5.2. The
Remember
super.
to read slowly. Wait,
Okay.
remember to read slowly because it does make a difference. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Brahma-samhita 5.2. The super excellent station of Krishna, which is known as Gokula, has thousands of petals and a corolla like that of a lotus sprouted from a part of his infinitary aspect, the whole of the leaves being the actual abode of Krishna. Purport. Gokul, like Goloka, is not a created, mundane, plain, unbounded character forms that display of his unlimited potency and his propagating manifestation. Baladev is the mainstay of that energy. The transcendental entity of Baladev has two aspects, namely infinite spiritual manifestation and infinite accommodating space for insentient gross things. Sri Sanatan Goswami has told us as follows in his Brihad Bhagavatamrita, which embodies the final essence of all the books of instructions. He displays his pastimes here in this land as he used to do in Goloka. The difference between the two planes lies only in their locations as high and low. That is, in other words, Krishna plays exactly the same part in Goloka as he exhibits on the mundane plane of Gokula. There is practically no difference between Gokula and Goloka, save that this, what exists in the shape of Goloka in the upper region, is the same as Gokula on the mundane plane when Krishna showed his various activities there.
So the basic concept being talked about in the purport is that Baladev is the mainstay of all the energy, which is accommodating space. Accommodating space is unlimited, has unlimited potency, both in the material and the spiritual worlds. And that energy comes from the spiritual world into the material world and manifests itself as the Dham, the abode, where the Supreme Lord performs his pastimes. The difference between that place in the material world and the place in the spiritual world is practically nil. A few of the differences were mentioned and were brought out in the purports, but the basic concept is that the transcendental abode of the Lord, the spiritual kingdom, the spiritual Dham, manifests itself in the material world. And this is being described by Brahma.
Thank you. Okay, next, Aesop, would you just read this one slide, and remember to read very slowly and clearly so that we can all go through this and understand it. Thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Brahma-samhita 5.3. The world of that transcendental lotus is the realm wherein dwells Krishna. It is a hexagonal figure, the abode of the indwelling predominated and predominating aspect of the Absolute. Like a diamond, The central supporting figure of self-luminous Krishna stands as the transcendental source of all potency. The holy name, consisting of 18 transcendental letters, is manifested in a hexagonal figure with sixfold division.
Thank you. Pati, you want to go through this
Yep.
or should we continue
No, that's
on?
fine.
Okay.
This is the hexagonal diagram, 6 sides. It says here, the whorl of the lotus, the whole lotus, the whorl of the lotus is the central part of the lotus, is the realm wherein dwells Krishna. It is a hexagonal figure, which is these 6 points, the abode of the indwelling, predominated and predominating aspect of the absolute. This is important as we progress through the book, especially these next few verses. The predominating aspect of the absolute is the Purusha. He's predominating aspect. And the predominated aspect is Srimati Radharani. She plays the part of Prakriti, the female aspect of the absolute. So it's a hexagonal figure, the abode of the indwelling, predominated and predominating aspect of the absolute. Like a diamond, the central supporting figure of self-luminous Krishna stands as the transcendental source of all potency. The holy name, we often hear that the name is non-different than the person. This proves it here. The holy name, consisting of 18 transcendental letters, is manifested in the hexagonal figure with sixfold divisions. That's these. It should be Klim Krishnaya Govindaya Gopijana Vallabhaya Swaha. That's the 18-lettered mantra. I
Okay.
hope that's clear.
This is a very profound study, and it's very clear if we go through the whole thing, but we won't take the time to do it now. Gopa Patni had a question. Could you state your question or comment, Gopa?
Yeah, I was wondering, who drew this? Who drew this?
I don't know. I found it in Bhakti Chaitanya Swami's study guide.
Okay, I was wondering if it came from the 5th chapter that Lord Chaitanya found in that temple.
No,
Okay,
no, this is there are Sanskrit ones, but because these are English letters, we know for certain that that wasn't included in the text.
okay, thank you very much.
If we see that the klim in the middle of that diamond, that's a diamond shape. The hexagonal shape is actually a diamond shape where everything is coming from.
I think claim will be described in the purport.
Yeah. Okay, so next, Manvantar, can you read this purport? Remember to read slowly and clearly, because actually, I think it's helping us all to get through this.
The transcendental pastimes of Krishna.
Louder, a little louder and slow.
The transcendental pastimes of Krishna are twofold, like manifested and non-manifested. The pastimes in Vrindavan, visible to mortal eyes, are the manifested Leela of Sri Krishna. And that which is not so visible is non-manifested Leela of Krishna. The non-manifested Leela is also visible in Goloka, and the same is visible to human eyes in Gokula, if Krishna so desires.
That sentence actually read a little bit differently than you read it. It says the non-manifested Leela is always visible in Goloka,
Gotcha.
and the same is visible to human eyes in Gokul if Krishna so desires.
Right. Okay. The manifest.
One more thing, everyone understands that Goloka is the manifestation of the entire spiritual world, which is not manifest here, but is manifested in Gokula, which is the holy Dham of Vrindavan. Go on, please. Thank you.
Manifestations of the non-manifested pastimes of Krishna with regard to the conditioned souls are twofold. Like 1, worship through the channel of the mantras. 2, spontaneous outflow of heart's spiritual love for Krishna. Sri Jiva Goswami has said that worship through the mantra is possible permanently in the proper place when confined to one pastime. This meditative manifestation of Goloka is the pastime attended with the worship of Krishna through the mantra. Again, the pastimes that are performed in different planes and in different moods are autocratic in diverse ways. Hence, swasiki, like spontaneous outflow of heart's spiritual love for Krishna.
So basically, this is talking about the manifested and non-manifested pastimes of Krishna. The ones that can be seen by mortal eyes means when he is performing those pastimes on earth, those are called the manifested Lila. And those that take place in the spiritual world or beyond material, beyond our vision, are called non-manifested. The non-manifested pastimes of Krishna with regard to conditioned souls are twofold. In other words, if the conditioned souls want to attain a vision and perception of those pastimes, there are two different paths, two different parts, two different types of that worship. One is through the channel of mantras. This was discussed in the forum. That's why I put it in written form, because it's a little bit expanded according to Adara Shakti's question. So you can refer to the forums for that answer and the quotes, I think by Jiva Goswami, where he describes that this channel of mantras is done in the preliminary stages. And as mentioned down here, because these pastimes are autocratic in diverse ways, which means they're completely independent, they are swarasiki. It means they can manifest in the heart of the devotee from any location, at any time, in any place. It's not that it has to be done according to the mantra that's being chanted by the devotee at a particular time and place. So it's more like a spontaneous outflow of the Lord's pastimes in someone's heart. Manifested, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask, the mantra sometimes the mantra can lead to this spontaneous attractions and spontaneous outflow of the heart. Good. By chanting the mantra. Yes. That's actually our worship, according to Lord Chaitanya. By chanting the holy name, which starts out to be sadhana bhakti, becomes manifest thoroughly in a mature state, so that this vision can be had, or the feelings of divine love. Yes, Nanda?
So my question is when they're referring here in this purport to the mantra, they're referring to clean Krishnaya Govindaya Gopijana Vallabhaya Swaha? And meditating on that mantra reveals Krishna's pastimes if it's done properly and perfectly?
In this regard, yes, but it could be other mantras as well.
As in Hare Krishna mantra?
Yes.
Okay.
Or Kama Bija Gayatri mantra, which will come a little later.
Okay, thank you.
Sama, just for your information, we'll go on pretty slow.
Okay. Well, I keep telling everyone to read slow, but we're doing well so far. Vaishnavi, can you read the next one?
Yes. Purport 5.3 continued. The meaning is that rasa is only the transcendental service of the central refuge, Sri Krishna, as predominating aspect of the Absolute One, by one's ego as the spiritual maid of the predominated moiety of the Absolute Integer, attended with pure devotion in the shape of one's entire self-surrender. The pastime in Goloka or in Gokula during the stage of devotional progress is the meditative worship through the mantra, and during the stage of perfection, the pastimes manifest themselves as the unrestrained transcendental jubilations. This is a real aspect of Goloka or Gokula, which will be made more explicit in due course. The meaning of the words Jyoti Rupena Manuna is that the transcendental meaning is expressed in the mantra, by means of which, on transcendental desire of love for Krishna and service of Krishna being added, one is established in the eternal love of Krishna. Such eternal pastimes are eternally manifested in Goloka.
I chose this first sentence because it's really beautiful when you understand what it means. Rasa is the transcendental service of the central refuge of Sri Krishna as the predominating aspect of the absolute. And I explained before, that's Krishna. By one's ego as the spiritual maid of the predominated moiety, which is Radharani, of the absolute integer, which is Krishna, attended with pure devotion in the shape of one's entire self-surrender. So the idea being presented is that one surrenders one's ego to the service of the predominated moiety of Srimati Radharani, which creates rasa with the transcendental service of Krishna.
Okay. All right, shall we go on?
Mhm.
Okay, Faye, would you read this one, please? And you can actually go on to read the next one also.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Brahma-samhita 5.4. The whirl of that eternal realm is Gokula, the hexagonal abode of Krishna. Its petals are the abodes of the gopis, who are part and parcel of Krishna, to whom they are most lovingly devoted and are similar in essence. The petals shine beautifully like so many walls. The extended leaves of that lotus are the garden-like dham, it is the spiritual abode of Shri Radhika, the most beloved of Krishna. Purport. The transcendental Gokula is shaped like the lotus. The eternal world is like a hexagonal figure, in that the entities of Sri Radha Krishna, appearing in the form of a mantra consisting of 18 transcendental letters, are centered. The propagating manifestations emanating from the Chit potency are present there, with the said entities as the center. Sri Radha Krishna is the primary cause, or the seed himself. Gopala Tapanai says Omkara signifies the all-powerful Gopala and his potency, and the Klim is the same as Omkara. Hence, Kama Bija, or the primary cause of all love, is connotative of the entities Sri Radha Krishna.
Okay. Same thing as described before, the hexagonal figure, Klim, Krishnaya, Govindaya, Gopijana Vallabhaya Swaha, means Radha and Krishna are the source of all love and devotion, and Krishna is the source of everything.
Okay, Bhadra, would you read the next one? How's your sound there? I hope that we can understand this.
I don't think there is sound, is it?
Yeah, it's good. It's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. First, I really appreciate Dhruv Maharaj Dhruv, that this Bhaktisiddhanta's language is so difficult to understand. It's difficult to understand. And it's nice that you are going through each one and explaining, because it's above my head. So thank you. Text
Read slowly,
5.
Bhadra. Remember to read very slowly.
Okay. Text 5.5. There is a mysterious quadrangular place named Svetadvip, surrounding the outskirts of Gokula. Svetadvip is divided into 4 parts on all sides. The abode of Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are separately located in each of these 4 parts. These 4 divided abodes are enveloped by the fourfold human requirements such as piety, wealth, passion, and liberation, as also by the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva, which deal with the mantra and which are the basis of the achievements of the fourfold mundane requirements. 10 tridents are fixed in the 10 directions, including the zenith and nadir. The 8 directions are decorated with the 8 jewels of Mahapadma, Padma, Sankha, Makara, Kachapa, Mukunda, Kunda, and Nila. There are 10 protectors, Dikpalas, of the 10 directions in the form of mantra. The associates of the hues of blue, yellow, red, and white, and the extraordinary potencies bearing the names of Vimala, etc., shine on all sides.
Okay, so the purport will go further into it. Basically, it's describing that there's a quadrangular place named Svetadvip surrounding the outskirts of Gokul. So we'll go deeper into what that is.
Do you want to put up the,
It's coming.
it's coming. Okay, thank you. Tisha, could you read this, please?
Yes. Purport 5.5. There are 10 tridents in 10 directions to prevent and disappoint those who are aspirants for having an entrance into Goloka through meditations without the grace of Krishna. Self-conceited people who try to reach this region through the paths of yoga, meditation, and jnana, empiric knowledge, are baffled in their attempts, being pierced by the 10 tridents. Self-annihilation has its excellence in Brahma Dham, which represents the outside covering of Goloka in the shape of tridents. Shula means a trident. The mundane threefold attributes and the threefold divisions of time represent the trident. Ashtanga yogis, example, aesthetics who practice the eightfold yoga, are the non-differentiative liberationists who, trying to approach in the direction of Goloka, fall headlong into the pits of disappointment by being pierced and cut asunder by these placed in 10 directions.
God.
Those who proceed towards the direction of Goloka through the channel of devotion, those who proceed towards the direction of Goloka through the channel of devotion, alloyed with majestic ideas, are fascinated with the charms of Vaikunta, which is the outer covering plane of Sri Goloka, at the site of the 8 perfections, namely Anima, etc., and majesties like Mahapadma, etc. Those who are less forward in their intelligence relapse into the sevenfold world, fall under the control of the 10 protectors of the 10 directions in the guise of mantras. In this wise, Goloka has been unknowable. In this wise, Goloka has become unknowable and inaccessible.
Thank you. 10 tridents. Often, when we think of items or things, we generally think of physical, their physical attributes and manifestations. Obviously, these 10 tridents are energies. They are energies which deflect souls attempting to approach Goloka without the proper attitude. Those souls who approach in different ways will be deflected and forced by the force of that superior energy to a particular location according to their approach. Yayathamam prapadyante tam stataiva bhajamyaham. And then he's describing different ones here, the yogis, the Astanga yogis, how they fall into disappointment, being cut asunder by the tridents placed in the 10 directions. They don't make it to Goloka if their aspirations of service are not correctly tuned. Those who proceed in the direction of Goloka through the channel of devotion alloyed with majestic ideas. In other words, they're enamored by the majesty and opulences of the Supreme, fascinated with the charms of Vaikuntha. So they'll go to Vaikuntha. If someone is attracted to the 8 perfections, anima, etc., or the majesties like Mahapadma, there are different allurements. So in this material world, we have the opportunity to fine tune and refine our approach to complete surrender with no material desires. That's that Anyabilasita Sunyam Jnana Kamadi Anavartam Anu Kulyena Krishna Anu Shilam Bhakti Uttamam. The topmost bhakti is being taught how to attain that. And then this is people that at least attain a higher realms. And then finally, those who are less intelligent, less forward in their intelligence, relapse to the 7-fold world, falling under the control of the 10 protectors. In other words, they go back into the material world.
Okay, so there's Bhadra with a question. And then after Bhadra, Ian, can you read this next slide? But after Bhadra, unmute yourself.
Yes, Prabhu, in the previous one, it mentioned about Dikpals.
Yes.
In the reading. Now, when we are in a parikrama, we mentioned the 4 Dikpals, Lord Shivas, is, the Kameshwar Mahadev, Nandeshwar Mahadev, Yogesh, Gokul.
Yes.
Are they the same we are talking here?
Yes, they are. If you go to any Dham, practically speaking, any Krishna Dham, even in India, there are generally Lord Shiva's temples in that same Dham. And it says here there are 10 protectors of the 10 directions in the form of mantras, and they manifest themselves in this world as those protectors. So yes, Lord Shiva is one of those protectors that is manifest to thwart those who try to get into Goloka without the proper attitude. That's what's being described in the purport.
But they are not in the original Golok Vrindavan. They are just when here Krishna passed, and then this Shiva as a Dikpala protecting this Braj. Is that right?
No, it's actually a manifestation of one of the tridents in the spiritual world. Just like the deity of Krishna is manifested Krishna in this material world. So in the spiritual world, these Dikpals also exist in their original form, and then they manifest themselves in this material world. That's
Can I
just
add
like,
to
just
that?
like Goloka and Gokula, sure.
Just Jai and Vijay, for example, there are a few gates before you get to enter Vaikuntha. So that's just a graphic example that we're all familiar with. That Jai and Vijay stand guard at the gates of Vaikuntha, and there are only one of 3 other guards, two other sets of guards standing guard there. In that at that gate, and there are, I think, 7 gates. So there are. This is not, of course, a pure devotee gets in beyond all gates, but this is to block, to keep it
Thank
pure.
you. Thank you.
Again, these are unmanifest to our vision, but they're being described by Brahma, who is actually aware of them and seeing them. So this was a forum by Solakshana, and who was going to read, Sama?
Ian, can you read, Ian? We don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
No, it's not really a good one, this connection. So, and this book is very difficult in the beginning to understand. So can you make it louder?
I try.
Speak closer to your microphone.
Oh, is it now?
It's a little bit muffled.
Okay.
Okay, but
okay.
see if you can try it. See if you can
Okay.
try it.
So, should I start by Shilakshana?
Forum discussion, yes.
From discussion, okay. So on that Gantt diagram, where it's situated, in the translation it says, the surrounding external plane of Gokul, is it inside the square in the white section? Where is it? 5.5. There is a mysterious quadrangular place named Sweater Deep, surrounding outskirts of Gokula. Sweater Deep is divided into 4 parts on all sides. The abode of Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha are separately located in each of these 4 parts.
Now, it should be noted that this is an important information. This is Pradum Om Namah, Pradumnaya Namaha, Om Vasudevaya, Aniruddha, and Sankarshan. This area never mixes with this area. And the reason will come up next.
Okay, so we'll have Ekadasi. Ekadasi, are you there? Can you read this next slide?
5.5 continued.
One second before you continue, Ekadasi. Let's just, we're in the same purport here. And what's happened previously was it was describing how the tridents and the dikpals thwart the advance of those souls trying to enter Goloka without the proper attitude. Now it switches to those who have the proper attitude, just to be clear.
It is only the divine selves of Godhead, the propounders of the divine dispensations for the different ages, who are always forward there to favor the approaching devotees who seek entry into the realm of Goloka through the channel of pure devotional love. These divine forms of Godhead are surrounded there with attendants of their respective natures. Svetadweep in Goloka is their place of abode. Hence, Srila Thakur Vrindavan, the manifest Vyas of Chaitanya Leela, has described the village of Navadweep as bearing the name of Svetadweep. In this Svetadweep, the concluding portions of the pastimes of Gokula exist eternally as the pastimes of Navadweep. Hence, the region of Navadweep, Vraj, and the realm of Goloka are one and the same indivisible entity. The difference only lies in the manifestations of the infinite variety of sentiments corresponding to the diverse nature of their devotional love.
Okay,
Something
going
to
back
say
here.
about
So,
that?
so what happens in here is Goloka, Radha Krishna pastimes. And what happens out here is Navadweep, Svetadweep, because some of the sentiments which cannot be experienced here manifest here. And we'll read about those now. Did you want to say something before we go on, Sama?
It would be Rasabas, if we understand what Rasabas is.
Let's wait
Oh, you
till we
want to
understand
continue?
it further. Yes.
Okay. Narayan, would you like to read this next part of the purport, please?
Yes.
Remember, loud and slowly.
Okay. Purport 5.5. The devotees who are imbued with all love and who walk in the footsteps of the spiritual maids of Vraj alone attain to the realm of Goloka. The different locations of the devotees in Goloka, according to the respective differences in the nature of their rasas, that is, mellow quality, are settled by the inconceivable power of Krishna. The pure devotees following the devotees of Vraj and those following the pure devotees of Navadip are located in the realm of Krishna and Gaura respectively. The identical devotees of Raj and Navadip simultaneously attain to the pleasures of the service in the realm of Krishna and Gaura.
So this means that there are some devotees who are worshippers of only Krishna. The devotees following the devotees of Braj and those following the pure devotees of Navadvip are located in the realm of Krishna and Gaura respectively. The devotees of Krishna go to Goloka, go to Braj. They go to that inner part, the inner hexagonal, and those who are followers of Lord Chaitanya go to Navadvip, the outside quadrangular. However, the identical devotees of Braj and Navadvip simultaneously attain to the pleasures of service in the realm of Krishna and Gaura, which means that they have bodies, spiritual bodies in Goloka, Braj, and in Navadvip. Just like we know the 6 Goswamis. They have spiritual bodies as gopis, and they have spiritual bodies as associates of Lord Chaitanya. Well, we read in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that the associates of Krishna, because the Lord wanted to experience the mood of Srimati Radharani, his associates also manifest in Navadvip to assist him in that endeavor. And this verse is from the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Next reader, Sama.
I'd like Ian to read this because he didn't really get much to read. Can you read slowly and clearly and loudly, Ian? Thank you. Gotta get this fixed, Ian. I don't hear you, darling. Oh.
We can't hear you, Ian. You have to unmute.
All right. You able to do it, Prabhu? Because we can't
Go on,
hear
yeah,
you.
have him come
Okay.
back.
Okay, we're gonna have to come back to you. And Preetam, would you read that?
Yes. CC RD 1.6. Desiring to understand the glory of Radharani's love, the wonderful qualities in him that she alone relishes through her love, and the happiness she feels when she realizes the sweetness of his love, the Supreme Lord Hari, richly endowed with her emotions, appeared from the womb of Srimati Sachi Devi as the moon appeared from the ocean.
Continue with this forum, okay, Pritam?
Okay. Forum discussion by Manvantara. It sounds like a circular conception. Of course, Goloka and Gokula are eternal. Somehow I was under the impression that Goloka was first, then Gokula. According to the author's statements in Brahma-samhita text 5, purport. In this Svetadvip, the concluding portions of the pastimes of Gokula exist eternally as the pastimes of Navadvip. Hence the region of Navadvip, Braja and the realm of Goloka are one and the same indivisible entity.
So it sounds to me like Manvantara, you got a little mixed up because of the language where it says concluding portions of the pastimes, meaning something came first and something came second. But actually, the way this language is being presented means that in Svetadvip, the sentiments that were not fulfilled by Krishna in Vrindavan were manifested in Svetadvip. So therefore, they're concluding portions because they weren't manifested there. Desiring to understand the glory of Radharani's love, Lord Chaitanya is Krishna, and he wants to accept the mood of Srimati Radharani. In the hexagonal figure, he can't do that because he's the predominated moiety, and Radharani is the predominated moiety. Remember, we also studied about Ashraya and Vishaya. So the person who's in the Vishaya position and the person who's Ashraya are in their respective positions. But in Navadvip, that's switched. Krishna takes the mood of Srimati Radharani, so therefore it's called the concluding portion of the pastime. Yet, hence the region of Navadvip, Braj and the realm of Goloka are one and the same indivisible entity. It's still taking place in the whirl of the lotus flower in Goloka Vrindavan.
Okay. All right, Mama Tara, does that answer your question? All right. Now, Gopa, would you please read this? Gopa.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello.
Okay, let's see. The Lord of Gokula is the transcendental, excuse me. The Lord of Gokula is the transcendental supreme Godhead, the own self of eternal ecstasies. He is the superior of all superiors and is busily engaged in the enjoyment of the transcendental realm and has no association with his mundane potency. Krishna never consorts with his illusory energy. Still, her connection is not entirely cut off from the absolute truth. When he intends to create the material world, the amorous pastime, in which he engages by consorting with his own spiritual chit potency, Rama, by casting his glance at the deluding energy in the shape of sending his time energy in its auxiliary activity.
It is an auxiliary activity. In other words, it's something separate. Is an auxiliary.
Auxiliary activity. Ramadevi, the spiritual chit potency, beloved consort of the Supreme Lord, is the regulatrix of all entities. The divine plenary portion of Krishna creates the mundane world. At creation, there appears a divine halo of the nature of his own subjective portion, Svamsha. This halo is divine Shambhu, the masculine symbol or manifested emblem of the Supreme Lord. This halo is the dim twilight reflection of the supreme eternal effulgence. This masculine symbol is the subjective portion of divinity who functions as progenitor of the mundane world, subject to the supreme regulatrix Niyati, the conceiving potency in regard to mundane creation, makes her appearance out of the supreme regulatrix. She is Maya, the limited, non-absolute apara potency, the symbol of mundane feminine productivity. The intercourse of these two brings forth the faculty of perverted cognition, the reflection of the seed of the procreative desire of the Supreme Lord.
Pati, I think you should describe just.
Do you want me to do it, or do
How
you want
about
to do
regular?
something?
You just described regulatrix real quick.
Okay.
And
I looked up
this is actually, we're getting to the heart of stuff. I didn't know what time it was. Go on.
Actually, right now, these verses, please note that it's transforming now. Up to text 6, 1 through 5 was describing the spiritual world and the position of Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan. Now it's changing. It says that Krishna never consorts with his illusory energy. Still, our connection is not entirely cut off from the absolute truth. And subsequently, we'll understand how. So I looked up regulatrix and couldn't find it in any dictionary. But I did find that when you add this suffix to a word, it makes it feminine in the form of a possessor. So it's like a regulator, but because it ends in trix, it's a female energy. So she's the regulatrix of all entities, means basically she's the regulator. She'll send them where they're supposed to go and control them the way they're supposed to be controlled. Rama Devi is the spiritual potency, and she's the regulatrix of all divine entity, of all entities. Now, the divine portion of Krishna creates the mundane world, the divine plenary portion, that's Mahavishnu. At creation, there appears a divine halo, the nature of his own subjective portion. This halo is Shambhu, the masculine symbol or manifested emblem of the Supreme Lord. And we'll go on to hear more about how that energy mixes with the material energy and creates this material world. Do you want
Thank you.
you want to explain something, Sama?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Because Nandaji, could you read the purport here?
Yes, purport 5:8. Sankarshan, possessed of creative desire, is a subjective portion of Krishna taking the initiative in bringing about the birth of the mundane world. Lying in the causal water as the primal Purusha avatar, he casts his glance towards Maya, the limited potency. Such glance is the efficient cause of the mundane creation. Shambhu, the symbol of masculine mundane procreation, is the dim halo of this reflected effulgence. It is the symbol which is applied to the organ of generation of Maya, the shadow of Rama, or the divine potency. Mahavishnu is Purusha, or the dominating divine person wielding the will. Pradhan, or the substantive principle in the shape of mundane entities, is the material principle. Nature, embodying the accommodating principle, Adhara, is Maya. The principle of embodied will, bringing about the intercourse of the two, is the dominating divine person, Purusha, subjective portion of Krishna, the manifester of the mundane world. All of these three are creators. The seed of amorous creative desire in Goloka is the embodiment of pure cognition. The seed of sex desire to be found in this mundane world is that of Kali, etc., who are the shadows of the divine potency. The former, although it is the prototype of the latter, is located very far from it. The seed of the mundane sex desire is a perverted reflection in this mundane world of the seed of the original creative desire. The process of the appearance of Shambhu is recorded in the 10th and 15th shlokas.
Very nice.
Okay, that is the explanation. The last paragraph here fully describes how everything in this material world is based on a perversion of the love that is going on in Goloka Vrindavan. And it is based on this egocentric thing that the egocentric emblem, Lord Shiva or Shambhu, and the ignition is this sex desire. And so I'm not going to say more on this right now, but keep that in mind, because the next text that we're going to read describes it fully. Madhurya Leela asked some question about this sex thing between this energy, Lord Shiva, and the material energy, and it seemed a little bit inappropriate. But in the purports that they explain this, it's a very scientific way to understand the cause of the material world. And sex desire, this desire for false ego identification with the material world, which comes from Lord Shiva. This is the dynamic force that keeps us in the material world, this sex desire, which covers everything on all levels, material, subtle material, the whole thing. We are stuck in this conception of who we are based on sex desire. So let's go on reading the next verse. The next is this continuation of the next.
No,
purport?
I wanted to
You wanna
take a
say
second.
something?
I wanted to explain just a little bit about this, this detail here. Mahavishnu is the Purusha or dominating divine person wielding will. Pradhan is the unmanifested material nature, or the substantive principle in the shape of the mundane entities. Nature embodying the accommodating principle, Adara, is Maya. This is also Prakriti. So what happens is that the divine person, Mahavishnu, glances over the material world. The example given is like the powerhouse, and that power it comes to the plug in your wall. You take the wire and you plug the wire into the wall. The wire carries the energy to the light bulb. So the wire is an extension of the energy coming to the plug, but it's not exactly the same. That's Shambhu. Shambhu carries the energy from Mahavishnu to Prakriti, to Pradhan, to Maya, to the material energy. So Shiva, Mahavishnu glances, and then that example will be given a little later, that just as milk is transformed into yogurt by the mixture of different acids, similarly, the supreme pure Vishnu Tattva, slightly adulterated, becomes the yogurt-like Lord Shiva, who carries and connects with material energy, because we read earlier that Krishna never consorts with his illusory energy. So there has to be some adulteration. Just wanted to clear that up. Unmute, son.
Vaishnavi, could you read this, please?
Yes. Brahma-samhita 5.9 through 11. All offspring of the consort of the great Lord Maheshwara of this mundane world are of the nature of the embodiment of the mundane masculine and feminine generative organs. The person embodying the material causal principle, which is the great Lord of this mundane world, Maheshwara, Shambhu, in the form of the male generating organ, is joined to his female consort, the limited energy Maya, as the efficient causal principle. The Lord of the world, Mahavishnu, is manifest in him by his subjective portion in the form of his glance. The Lord of the mundane world, Mahavishnu, possesses thousands of heads, eyes, and hands. He is the source of thousands of avatars in his thousands of subjective portions. He is the creator of thousands of individual souls.
So this is to understand that Krishna, who is expanding himself as Lord Shiva, is the Lord of the mundane world. Is that correct, Pati? I can't hear you.
Oh.
Unmute.
Well, that's what it said here, yes.
Yeah.
All offspring,
Okay, so
all offspring of the consort of the great Lord of this mundane world. The person, yeah, he's actually, in one sense, obviously.
everything is coming from Krishna, but in the material world, since Krishna, we read in another verse, does not deal with the material energy personally. He has expanded himself through this ray of Lord Shiva, who is the father, actually, of the material world. So next, wait a second. Manvantaraji, could you read this next, please?
The same Mahavishnu is spoken of by the name of Narayana in this mundane world. From that eternal person has sprung the vast expanse of water of the spiritual causal ocean. The subjective portion of Sankarshan, who abides in Parabhoma, the above supreme Purusha, with thousands of subjective portions, reposes in the state of divine sleep, Yoga Nidra, in the waters of the spiritual causal ocean. The spiritual seeds of Sankarshan, existing in the pores of skin of Mahavishnu, are born as so many golden sperms. These sperms are covered with 5 great elements. The same Mahavishnu entered into each universe as his own separate subjective portions. The divine portions that entered into each universe are possessed of his majestic extension, like they are the eternal universal soul, Mahavishnu, possessing thousands of heads. The same Mahavishnu created Vishnu from his left limb, Brahma, the first progenitor of beings, from his right limb, and from the space between his 2 eyebrows, Shambhu, the divine masculine manifested halo. The function of Shambhu in relation to jivas is that this universe, enshrining the mundane egotistic principle, has originated from Shambhu.
Okay. Do you have something to add to that right now?
Let's read the purport.
Okay. Bhadra, would you read that? Bhadra.
Purport 516. When in course of the progressive evolution of mundane creation, each universe is manifested, then in the principle of Shambhu, born of the space between the 2 eyebrows of Vishnu, there appears the manifestation of the personality of Rudra. Yet under all circumstances, Shambhu fully enshrines the mundane egotistic principle. The innumerable jivas, as spiritual particles, emanating from the soul in the form of pencils of rays of effulgence, have no relation with the mundane world when they come to know themselves to be the eternal servants of the Supreme Lord. They are then incorporated into the realm of Vaikuntha. But when they desire to lord it over Maya, forgetting the real identity, the egotistic principle Shambhu, entering into their entities, makes them identify themselves as separated enjoyers of the mundane entities. Hence, Shambhu is the primary principle of the egotistic mundane universe and of perverted egotism in jivas that identifies itself with their limited material bodies.
Okay, one thing I'd like to, can I say something, Pachi, real quick? That we have to understand how deep this goes for the living entities in the material world, how deeply we identify with this misconception that we are the material body. And this is Krishna in his other form of Lord Shiva for giving us, fulfilling that material desire that we have. It is perverted egotism. So, and it's based on sex desire, which ultimately means I am the enjoyer. So we are very deeply ingrained in this material world, and it's very fortunate that we have an opportunity to understand that and release ourselves. But we shouldn't beat ourselves up thinking that, oh, we'll come to the point of where we won't be affected at all. We just, when it's raining outside, you're going to get wet. But we do have the umbrella of the holy name. Even Prabhupada would say often that this place is miserable. The material world is miserable. We shouldn't be surprised at the onslaught of Maya, the onslaught of these weapons of Maya to disturb us. We shouldn't be disturbed. Illusion that it's not going to happen to us, even if we advance in Krishna consciousness. So we have some work to do, but there's great hope. Okay, Pati, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I wanted Pritam to read this and see if there's any further questions.
Ask him.
Okay, forum discussion. Question. I'm still very confused about the respective functions of Lord Shiva, Shambhu, and Lord Brahma in the process of creation. In the second canto, we did not come across the role of Shambhu in the process of cosmic creation. Could you please clarify? Secondly, is Rama Devi the same personality as Durga Devi, Mahamaya? Brahma-samhita 5.7 answers. Rama Devi, the spiritual Chit potency, beloved consort of the Supreme Lord, is the regulatrix of all entities. The conceiving potency in regard to mundane creation makes her appearance out of the supreme regulatrix. She is Maya, the limited, non-absolute apara potency, the symbol of mundane feminine productivity.
So is this clear, Pritam? It says here.
This answers the second part of the question.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Now, what's not clear about Shambhu and Brahma?
Like, what's their respective role in the creation? We heard that from Garbhodaksha Vishnu, there's sprouts and lotus, and Lord Brahma is born. But where does Lord Shiva, fall in this whole process of cosmic creation? Because we read somewhere that Lord Shiva is born from Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma is his father. Okay. Again, we are talking about, there's a Lord Brahma, there is Lord Shiva before Lord Brahma as well, who is involved in the creation. So that part is very confusing to me. Are Lord Shiva and Lord Shiva and Shambhu same personality? Are they different? So it's kind of very gray area for me.
Do you want to take that?
Sure. Yes, Lord Shiva and Shambhu are the same person. We read earlier that when Mahavishnu glances, that glance, that energy of the Lord who is purely spiritual, mixing or interacting with the limited apara potency, has to be adulterated. That's an energy, and that's the personality of Lord Shiva. Just like Lord Krishna has his various expansions, like Balaram, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, so many expansions come from him, that example of the candle. Similarly, Lord Shiva has this similar potency, that he has expansions. And that potency of the glance and mundane egotistic principle manifests in each universe and has a presiding deity. That presiding deity manifests himself as the guna avatar in the mode of ignorance, tamas, and that one of those expansions manifests from Brahma as his son. In that pastime with the four Kumaras, when he's born, he's one of the expansions of the original Lord Shiva, Sada Shiva. Even Lord Advaita Acharya, he's considered Vishnu Tattva because he's that original seed of that glance over material energy. Sama, did you want to say something?
Yeah. In text number 15, in the Brahma-samhita, it is said, do you have it up there? The same Mahavishnu created Vishnu, the same Mahavishnu, that is the first expansion of Krishna in the productiveness of the material world. There's a system how this is being manifest. So from that Mahavishnu lying in the ocean of what is the name of the ocean?
Causal ocean.
In the causal ocean. From him, the same Mahavishnu created Vishnu from his left limb. This is before the other universes were even manifest. This is way in the beginning. Of course, it's linear is another thing. So from his left limb, he created Vishnu. Brahma, the first progenitor of beings, from his right limb. And from the space between his two eyebrows, Shambhu, the divine masculine manifested halo. So those three energies and entities were created by the original Mahavishnu, and from them and from there's other expansions. This is even before and we've got another verse, how the universes are emanating from the pores, and then they find their manifested form in the Pradhan, encircles them, gives them a form in the material world. It's all organized by Krishna perfectly, and if we don't understand it,
let's go back to the original question of the functions of Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, and how, because that's the original question that Pritam asked. Is it clear now, Pritam, the positions of Brahma and the personality of Shiva and Shambhu in this material universe?
Much clearer, but still not 100% clear. But that's okay. I mean, at least I have something to meditate upon.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing about the time factor? Remember the time? I wish I remember which verse it was from. The time element that's being shot into the material world, and that is also Lord Shiva, the time element. And that time element we see as a destructive force, right? From the Prabhupada often said, in the material world, a child is born, he immediately dies. So that time element is a destructive force in that in the universe, in the whole everything of everything. That's the manifestation of Lord Shiva when he shoots that, impregnates the material world.
Another thing that you might consider in your meditations is that Lord Shiva has his own tattva. We know there's Vishnu tattva, there's Jiva tattva, there's also Shiva tattva. It's such a unique energy that it actually has its own category in the Vedas. So it's very complex, and it will take time for revelation for all of us. Anybody else have any other questions?
No one has a question.
Okay.
Everyone knows everything perfectly. This is not an easy study. I was actually, when my husband said we're doing this next, I was actually a little terrified. But, you know, if we analyze it like this, I know I got something a wonderful realization about the this sexual kind of egoism that is manifest by Lord Shiva, and it is all pervasive in the material world, and it's based on the false ego that I am this body.
Bajra, did you have a question?
Nanda also. Oh, there's Bajra. Nanda first, then Bajra.
So when you ask for questions, can I ask about previous verses or just this particular verse? Because I have a question of
anything we covered.
Okay, so in the verse that was talking about the self-annihilation, remember that phrase, self-annihilation? Does that self-annihilation refer to the annihilation of the ego? You know, one gives up the ego. self-annihilation in Brahma or something? Sorry, it was a verse.
What's the verse, Nandaji? Do you
Sorry,
remember?
I didn't take the number of the verse. I only took
Oh,
the
okay.
sorry.
It's right here. It's the purport to 5.5. Self-annihilation has its excellence in Brahmadam, which represents the outside covering of Goloka in the shape of the tridents. This
Yeah.
particular purport is talking about the tridents and the people who are the souls who are thwarted in their attempt to get to Goloka with an improper attitude. Self-annihilation is an impersonalist.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So their destination is Brahmadam, which represents the outside covering of Goloka.
Okay. And then stay on that slide, please.
Mhm.
Then where it talks about the 10 tridents are energies, those without the proper, I don't know if it's that slide, but it's in this topic. Those who are without the proper attitude will be deflected, you know, by way of those 10 tridents.
Yeah.
So when Prabhupada uses the phrase, the last snare of Maya, would that be one of those stages that they've made advancement to a certain point, but then in the last snare of Maya, they get deflected by those 10, energies?
Actually, snare and trident could be synonyms in this regard, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Didn't Prabhupada say the last snare of Maya is that one is thinking that he's God?
Yeah, which would be what would somebody who would try to approach Goloka without the grace of Krishna, because they're thinking.
Yeah,
Okay.
right. That certainly would be, you wouldn't get through the gate.
Vajraprabhu?
This is not related to what we read, but there are 62 slokas in this Brahma-samhita, and you are going to cover just in 3 sessions?
Just like the Chatur Shloki. He spoke only 4 verses. He told the whole thing. I'm sorry. What we're doing, what we wanted to do, because of the complexity of the text and the book, was just give an overview, give devotees kind of like a seed of thought. And because we had just studied the 2nd canto, when I was doing that and putting the course together, I realized this is the same topic from a little bit different point of view. And again, knowing that the beginning of Chaitanya Charitamrita is exactly the same, I'm thinking to do the next course on that, so we can go even more deeply into these same topics, because obviously they're foundational.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else have something? Pritam, did you have something?
Yes, I have one last question. So you did post Srila Jiva Goswami's commentary, right? So do you think studying that would help? Not right now, maybe after this study is over, after this course is over. Later on,
Exactly why I included it. Yes, I also haven't read the whole thing and wanted to read it after we're finished.
Yeah, it's about 80 pages. So I was thinking maybe I could read that later.
Yes, yeah, exactly what I was thinking.
Okay, thank you.
All right then. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Hare
We
Krishna.
will see you next week. Good luck.
Thank you. This was very helpful. Thank you very kindly.
Jai, wonderful.
Hare
Appreciate it.
Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Vanchakal
Krishna.
Patubhyascha, Kripasindu
Homage to Srila Prabhupada, by whose mercy we were able to study this.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.